You are listening to an Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. We are thrilled you're here. Our guest today was Lars Clemensen. Our guest this week is Lars Clemensen, and I am so excited to talk about him. There are a few things I do want to talk about, so I obviously don't want to rush into talking about it now because it makes more sense to get into the conversation. But I do want to talk about one of the things that he talks about in terms of schools being the center of community. That to me was super important and a good reminder. We'll get into that, I hope, on the back end. The other part that I wanted to talk about was his after action review and about communication and just ways that people do communicate. So anyway,
I actually would like to talk, I personally want to talk about what he describes as schools being in the future business and his own skills and interest inventory that he did as a student coming up in terms of what he wanted to do when he was growing up. And it told him that he would be good in management, education, or entertainment. And the entertainment one really stuck out here. Lars is easy to listen to. I enjoyed him very much.
Yeah, me too. He was really fun. And, in fact, last week we had a great conversation with Daniel Sobel. And it made me think. I was re-listening to it, and he was entertaining in the sense that it was just a really engaging conversation. Lars was entertaining in the sense it was a really engaging conversation. Really had a lot of fun with him. But I did want to tell you that as I was re-listening to Daniel Sobel and mentioning again that next year, so this year it's in Kazakhstan, the World Inclusion Congress, and then next year it's in Qatar. Silly. But I once had a dream where I was required to sing the national anthem for Qatar. And so they were like, would you please honor us by singing the national anthem? And I said, absolutely. And I just went, oh, Qatar, Qatar, you have many nice things.
Do you know the words
so anyway,
beyond?
No. They just had many nice things. At that point, I woke up. Hopefully, they were so wowed by my rendition. They said, you may wake up now. Or they were so dismayed by it. They said, it's time for you to wake up.
I think wowed. It definitely feels like it was leaning that direction before you woke up. So Qatar, Qatar, the national anthem for Qatar, or Peter's national anthem for Qatar, makes me think of I'm the father. I'm the guy that makes songs up as well in my house all the time about anything. And at one point, my eldest asked me or told me to stop, and I told him that I couldn't because it was the primary moneymaker in our family, and that was what's going to send him to college. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, with two hits, the primary hits of Spiders in My Pockets, which was a song basically made to scare him, and then another song called Sugar Parrot, were big hits, and those were the two that were going to pay his.
I'd like to know the lyrics of Sugar Parrots. I don't want to even touch Spiders in My Pocket, but I will say that if you are interested in telling us what you think the lyrics of either Jamie's songs, or you have a song that you sing as part of your own role as the lead singer in your home, please put it in our comment section. We'd love to get 5 stars and know what you're thinking, know what your lyrics are. I'll add some melody to it. It will sound a lot like our national anthem. Anyhow, let's get into our conversation with Lars Clemensen. You are listening to an Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. I'm Peter Stiepelman.
And I'm Jamie Clemenson.
And we will see you on the other side.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zach Taylor. I'm the Executive Director at the Center for Transforming Education.
And I'm Peter Stiepelman, a former superintendent from the Midwest and the host of an Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. And listen, we call it an imperfect leader because one of the things that we do know in leadership is that we get into these positions and then there's sort of this expectation that we're going to be perfect. And that's just not the case. And what we're seeking all the time is an opportunity to come together with others who are doing very similar work and learn from each other, share our stories, share our successes, and also try to figure out how to solve some of our problems. And so Zach and I have created Talk Soup is what we're affectionately calling it, SUPT, right? In terms of superintendents coming together, learning together, and also having fun together. Zach, what else would you add?
I just say that in my work with school leaders that I've seen almost, a kind of loneliness at the top of the system. And the fact that oftentimes leaders feel lonely, it's a lonely place. And this is an opportunity to come, to even commiserate a little bit, but also to have a reflective practice, to find solutions and to come together with people who understand, maybe the only people that really understand what you're going through, and to find those solutions, to find ways to feel encouraged, to move forward day to day, month to month as we meet.
If you'd like to learn more, come over to our website, imperfectleader.com, and sign up. We'd love to spend time with you.
We look forward to seeing you.
Today on An Imperfect Leader, our guest is Lars Clemensen. Now, Lars is the superintendent of Hampton Bays Union Free School District on Long Island, New York. I say on because if you're from Long Island, you don't say in Long Island, you say on. You're online when you're waiting for people. You're not in line. He is the president of NYSCOSS, the New York State Council of School Superintendents. Lars, welcome to An Imperfect Leader.
I'm glad to be here. And you're right. You're on Long Island. After you pass away, you're in Long Island. But until then, you're on Long Island, right? More of a way to think about it.
It is kind of a morbid way to think about it. Now, Lars, I did wear my Mets hat today. I don't know if you're a Mets or Yankees fan. I don't know what they do out in Suffolk County. I'm a Nassau County guy, although there are a lot of Yankee fans in Nassau County, too.
I'll tell you, I have a 9-year-old son, Ryland, and a 4-year-old daughter, Logan. When I left SA on Saturday, I left on a 6 a.m. flight and flew ultimately to
St. Lucie, Port St. Lucie, Port St. Lucie.
Yes! Port St. Lucie.
A Mets fan.
And we caught the Nationals at the Mets on Sunday, and my son got a ball from batting practice hit by Brett Beatty. And
nice. He's having quite a spring training.
Yeah, and ultimately signed by Darryl Strawberry, who was at the game.
Oh, yeah, I saw that Straw was, so I watched that game. That was what? It was 6-0, then 6-6, and then 7-6.
And then 7-6, yeah. And my little boy is on fire. He's been wearing his wet Mets sunglasses to school every day.
Oh, I love it. I read a study about the age that one becomes, whatever fan they become. So it's either influenced by their parent or if the team has had some success between the ages of 8 and 13. And so I was in 86. I was in middle school when Mets won the World Series. So Mets fan for life. That was it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Rylan is baking it in right now, which is a lot of fun. He attends Hampton Elementary. So
that is awesome. I'm super excited to hear that. Okay, cool. It really is so wonderful to have you on the program as a Long Islander, South Shore, Nassau County. I grew up actually in my mother's childhood home and then left Long Island after college. And as I understand it, Hampton Bays is your childhood home. But you moved to Texas after 8th grade and you went back to be the superintendent. And I think that's pretty cool. So let me ask you, or if you don't mind, would you say something about that? What was that experience like? I read you were on the beach one summer and all of a sudden you were approached by the superintendent. And I'm not sure if I read all that.
Yeah, no, that's a ripped from the headlines thing. Met with my future superintendent who ultimately hired me as middle school principal. We were building a new middle school that just turned 17 on February 24th. And I was hired to be the principal of that building. It was still a hole in the ground. And I was out visiting my grandmother and my aunt and cousins and uncle and at the beach in a bathing suit. And my aunt, who taught at the elementary school for more than 30 years, said, "Oh, you need to meet the superintendent." So talk about ripping down all the barriers. You're in a bathing suit, standing down at the surf.
That's one of the reasons I never went to the community pool as superintendent. I was like, I'm going to be in a perpetual PTA meeting in my bathing suit.
Yeah. I find it's in one section, it's a faculty meeting because it's all the teachers sitting together. And then it's the PTA meeting. It's like a minefield.
It's so funny. Yeah, they don't want to see you either.
Yeah, right. That's probably more the case. So yeah, my family moved to Texas, to Dallas, North Dallas, Plano, when I was finishing 8th grade. So I attended high school and college, went to the University of Texas, where I studied American Studies and Government. Thought that I wanted to go right into politics, worked in the Texas legislature for both a state rep and a senator, did some government relations stuff with a corporation, and was really interested in schools and education. My mom was a teacher, aunts were teachers. And so I grew up with the behind the scenes, being in the classroom in the morning and in the afternoon. And back in those days, the cool thing about that was that you got to play with the colored chalk that only came out during the math lesson or the diagramming a sentence lessons, right? And I was sort of eyes open in the Texas legislature when I saw legislators writing public education policy, well-meaning, well-intentioned, with lacking some critical perspective. Maybe they were writing from their own experience as a student. And so I joined the Teach for America program and was placed in Paterson, New Jersey, right across the street from Joe Clark's Eastside High School. I taught at PS 11 and thought that I would do good work, but also use that as a clinical experience to then go back into policymaking and have the experience of what teachers and schools need. Never made it back to Texas, made it back to my hometown from New Jersey to Hampton Bays. And in the superintendency, there's plenty of politics and policy that's involved.
Yeah. Boy, we could have a whole conversation. I'd be just fascinated by, as superintendents, we navigate, and certainly in your role now with NYSCOSS, we navigate these halls and find that so often legislation that's being proposed is sort of a one-off issue that a constituent says to a rep, about what they're upset about or what they've changed. And then it gets legs and everyone's trying to figure out what to do about it. And if I can, I'll give you an example of in Missouri, legislation passed that if a child is showing livestock or at the state fair, they're on the football team, you have to send a coach with that kid because a state legislator's kid was showing livestock at the state fair and missed a number of practices that rendered the child ineligible to begin the season. And so now we're not going to penalize kids for missing practice because they are showing at the state fair. So now schools have to send a coach with them to do the training.
It's wildly local, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the three things that we think about all the time, the 3 Bs: burgers, balls, and buses, right? Athletics, food services, and transportation. What could be some of the biggest headaches operationally.
No doubt. Yeah. And it was a district we were 300 square miles. So we had 212 buses. We were running them all over the time. And so when you're thinking about snow days and you're thinking about potentially a county road or gravel road, a 5-year-old waiting for a bus the fuel lines have gelled, you make decisions and people go, well, it's fine over here. You're like, I got you. So
yeah, life is local.
Life is local. Lars, I read something about you and I can't put my hands on it right now, but you were talking about busing and you said something about being the future business. It struck me because superintendents really are in the business of helping children plan for productive futures. And that often means innovative programming and opportunities for kids. But in order to pay for those programs, enrollment has to be there. As every superintendent knows, enrollment translates into revenue. And even with declining enrollment locally and in many districts in New York State and certainly nationwide, you've identified opportunities to expand elective offerings in your own district. And so how do you navigate budget constraints, staff capacity, while also ensuring that new programs align with student interests and that future workforce need? Kind of a big question, but I'm really curious just because I think you've talked about it and I wish I could put my hands on it.
It is the future business. And when I think about how schools are evolving, I think about silos and how when you go to traditional school, which if you looked in an operating room 100 years ago, it would look wildly different than it does today, right? But if you looked in a classroom, in some instances, and maybe more than some, it looks exactly like it did 100 years ago, right? And that's not working anymore. And in New York, a commissioner of education and the Board of Regents put together a blue ribbon commission to study graduation measures. And in New York, we have a tried and true Regents exam that we hold to. It's been in place since the Civil War. And that's the only way we can prove that a child can graduate and be ready for the future. What all of that kind of means to me is that it's a scavenger hunt through high school and you're collecting enough coins and you get your coin, you put it in your coin purse. And once you have enough coins, we give you a diploma and off you go. And we hope that we've done a good job weaving together what all of those coins mean, like putting a thread through the experience so that if you're in this elective, you're going to join this club and that's going to lead to this internship or job shadowing program. But even before that, when you boil down what our job is, it is simply to figure out what a child is good at and what a child likes and help them with that self-awareness process and find out where they intersect and then build program around that. And that program has to be responsive. If we have a job fair, so Naviance is a great tool we use for career development. When I came back to Hampton Bays, my guidance counselor was still my guidance counselor. She was still here and she brought me my permanent record. Just as a fun thing, let's look through it. Interestingly, in 3rd grade, my ears
You were
still
like, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
We don't have to do that.
Oh.
That's all right.
But I pulled out a piece of newsprint and it was the back score of my career interest inventory that I took in home ec in 7th grade. In pencil, give your score 1 if you like this or 2 if you like this. You add it up and it tells you. Now it's all obviously much more innovative. My top 3 job areas were management, education, and entertainment. I never saw that piece of paper again after 1992. And we should be revisiting that every single year. It was a unit that the teacher did very well. It went in a file. So in Hampton Bays, we do that inventory, a skills inventory and an interest inventory and a career clusters identifier every single year starting in 6th grade. Have your interests changed? Have experiences changed? So that you're refining a really intimate self-awareness muscle to know what you like, what you're good at, so that all those coins turn into a diploma that's actually a ticket It's going to take you to the next place. Declining enrollment is a critical risk to that, because when enrollment goes down and your taxpayers are saying the highest portion of my tax bill is schools, and I'm a senior citizen on a fixed income, I have to understand where they're coming from. So the other critical role in my job is to be a communicator out in the community all the time, at the beach in the bathing suit all the time, having that conversation to say, when there are less kids, don't just lay off an English teacher because there's less English graduation requirement. What can we give them? Creative writing, computer coding, something that then takes kids out of study hall and puts them in electives that will evolve and change based on what students are interested in.
It really makes me think of Richard Rothstein's work. He was at Columbia, he was at Berkeley. He wrote about, and I think he's an economist by trade, but he really talked about the providing of opportunities and enrichment is really what will keep a kid connected to school, and also has, because he's an economist, translate into whatever, if we have a shared image around success, one part of that is a productive life where you're able to provide for your family. And so you just said something that made me think about that, which is study hall has its place. And for some kids, it's, look, I got a work schedule after school. Yep. So study hall is the place where I get stuff done. And for others, it's a place to sit because that's the only place that has supervision. Whereas you're talking about, what if, because aligned to your interest, you actually want to be a screenwriter, and we've got a creative writing class, and you could actually do that under the guidance of a master teacher who we didn't reduce their FTE, but rather extended what they're capable of doing. Does that sort of resonate?
100%. And the community has to be on board with that the expense side of a budget is an investment side. If we think about it as investment, not expense, it's Pollyanna to say, oh, it's not an expense because my school taxes are pretty high and I live in this community. But if we value it as an investment that we're going to get a return on, and our community is going to be stronger for it, I feel like we get more buy-in. And you mentioned like the hook, the thing that motivates the child, whether it's basketball or theater or career and technical education or whatever it is. We're in the middle of a paradigm shift, I think, in public education, where if we look at our policies, sometimes with discipline, for example, we only have a binary route. You're either in school or you're at school. I can exclude you or I can keep you in. I can't do community service. We're moving the legislation for maybe some restorative practices that you can mandate. But traditionally, eligibility policies I think about. So if you don't get the grade, if you don't do the homework, you're not going to be on the basketball team. But flipped another way, if you're not on the basketball team, this is just a snowball that's going to pick up speed of bad grades, right?
Totally agree.
You have poor attendance, you are tardy, you are not successful in your academic classes. Therefore, the CTE program that we're going to bus you to the county vocational center is an investment we can't make in you. When you flip it around and all that data is telling us this student is not being successful because there's no hooking him or her in this building. It might be there doing welding or aviation or cosmetology. So I think it's a great paradigm shift, I think, that's taking place.
I agree. I would also note that, and I'm sure you're seeing this as leading at the state level, the superintendents throughout the entire state of New York, that whenever you agitate for change, the system will work aggressively to get back to status quo. And one of the things that we noticed with the pandemic is that we started to really recognize that we needed to innovate. Schools really were the center for kids in every way. And when you talk about binary, you're either in or you're out. And now we could possibly even leverage technology to say, you're in, you may not be in our building at the moment, but you're in because we're able to maintain and continue your learning if in fact you had to be suspended. We're looking for every opportunity not to do that to you, right?
Yeah.
Because we know that every minute you're out means fewer minutes that you're learning, fewer minutes of connection to others, fewer minutes of being able to build meaningful relationships.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just was sort of thinking that we also have to be really mindful of those who want to return us back to, oh, no, it's fine. Look, let's just get back to that conveyor belt education system. It's been fine for 100 and 150 years. And yet we really want to embrace the sort of the more child-centered, the more thoughtful way of, and I just love that you do this really intentionally each year of surveying or chronicling how kids think about their interests and where they want to be, and then responding to it in a really systematic way. I'd love to explore that some other time with you, because we did something similar where we surveyed And then we sort of pushed out to kids, here are some things we think that you would be interested in as you're thinking about registering for classes, which is so falling short in terms of that one-on-one personal conversation with the child to say, look, this is what I see. Does it resonate? Is that similar to what you want to do? And then to build that with the kid so the kid has agency. So anyhow.
A few years in the first week of school, our leadership team each takes a day working with the seniors, and they take a class called Senior Seminar. The first semester is really focused on applying to schools, getting your Common App ready, resume, things like that. What's next for you, budgeting. But because the school counselors are engaged in operational schedule changes and getting the building up and running in those first few days, we jump in. And
could you imagine you say to them right at and we'd like you to go to senior
you have a full teaching load today.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
the schedule changes tonight. This wouldn't work. So I teach about what do you like and what are you good at? And that's the title of the lesson. And we go through the skills and their most current skills and interest inventories. And one girl, we'll never forget, 2 years ago, bursts into tears because her skills identified that she might be a good funeral director. And she said, I don't want to be a funeral director. I said, first of all, this isn't like the Hunger Games where you're handed, you don't have to be, but let's explore why your results, what does a funeral director need? And you need kindness, you need empathy, you need a human connection, the ability to communicate. And I said, what do you want to be? And she said, an elementary school teacher. I said, don't you need those 4 things for that as well? So the opportunity to have those conversations is important. And that data, some folks cringe when you say data. This is such critical data that everybody should have so that it's not just the counselors having that conversation. That's the best job in the world, a school counselor. You get to just work with kids on their goals and skills and interests and get them to meet their goals. You don't have to do the discipline, the lesson planning, the grading.
Right. Sign me up.
It's the best job in the world. Talk to kids about their futures. If everybody takes a piece of that, then the child knows everybody's talking the same language, including the parent.
Yeah. I mean, in thinking of a metaphor, that really serves as a rudder for so many of our kids graduate high school feeling somewhat rudderless. They didn't have anyone kind of talking about what direction they might go in. Yeah. If you're just joining us on An Imperfect Leader, my guest is Lars Clemensen, the superintendent of Hampton's Bay Union Free School District and the president of NYSCOSS. In a leadership model that I use to advise others, there's a dimension called collective aspiration. And this is really the heart of the work that we do in education. And inside that dimension is a term, compelling purpose, or essentially answering the question, what do we want to create together? And I've been thinking about your current role at the state level, a massively large state. And I've been thinking about this question. So what are some ways that NYSCOSS has brought people together to answer what leaders across the state want to create for children in New York State? And I will probably interject at some point because I really want to explore, I think you were talking about maybe a complementary but alternative path to the traditional regions. And I didn't think we explored that enough. But would you talk about talk about the role that you have and the bringing of people? If you're from upstate New York and you're from downstate New York, there's radically different perspectives and sometimes attitude against the other perspectives and maybe bias. So kind of curious.
New York is a geopolitical place. I find that when it's related to public education particularly, it's not partisan politics, it's geopolitics. It's Long Island, the North Country, Western New York, Central New York, the city, and how wildly different they are. I'm so proud to be a part of the council of NYSCOSS, and even more so this year to be leading it. Our executive director, Chuck Dietrich, and our executive committee and officers, and a staff of 13. So a member organization of over 1,000 people with a small staff of 13. They do the work of 113. And what I've learned in this role this year, particularly, is what you said, how vastly different. When folks hear Lars Clemensen is coming to Central New York, and he's from Hampton Bays, and he's going to talk about school funding, I would imagine there might be some that go, all right, he's from the Hamptons. I've seen the Hamptons. The Kardashians go to the Hamptons. And I'll say, there's a story of challenge in every community. In Hampton Bays, we are the middle class, working class hamlet of the Hamptons. We're the gateway to the South Fork. The helicopters fly over our houses to land at the estates. And poverty in the rural parts of the state, North Country rural poverty, is something Long Islanders can't get their head around. And so the value I find in NYSCOSS bringing people together is how this super respected organization who has the ear of the commissioner and the executives in the legislature can articulate a narrative that is supportive and advocating for public education, but also nuanced enough that the needs of the Binghamton area are not compromised by talking about the needs of Long Island. NYSCOSS is great at that, also great at professional learning. So your podcast and the professional learning networks are so critical, because when you're a fifth grade teacher, there might be 7 of you on the grade level having the same experience, right? You're a principal, there might be 3 or 4 of you in a district that's a moderate size. But as you move through the organization towards the superintendency, there are less and less of you who have that experience. And so the connection, the professional network and learning that takes place is so critical. 15 years in the seat in Hampton Bays, and I'm still texting a colleague every day. Did I miss this? Did I do this incorrectly? I've never faced this before.
And sometimes an emoji of just a burning garbage bin. Just here we are. It's another dumpster fire.
There's a great gif of a dumpster floating down in a flood that's on fire.
Oh,
I
please.
have that one
Every
saved.
superintendent has that.
Yep. That
So
one
yeah,
floats around.
so it is about that, the personal connection and continued development and professional learning that you get from your colleagues. It is also trying to find some humor in what sometimes is, because it's such an isolating job. I imagine NYSCOSS also works really hard because of the disparate perspectives and different ways that throughout the state that you're approaching issues of education. That I guess there's got to be like a common ground, or sort of. And I'm wondering, is it that? Is it the looking for alternative pathways for kids because it's really thinking about that career readiness or that life readiness piece that sort of unifies superintendents throughout your state? Or is it something that you have brought as president? You get to sort of bring a theme or a vision, and how do you sort of bring that to everybody and sort of rally around it?
I think it's a common core value of superintendents to find opportunity. That we work with some of the best people in the business. And I think what propels individuals to the superintendency is their belief in opportunity. And while what we know are Regents exams, we can all point to examples where the Regents exam was the barrier. Everything else was fine. And in our educational expertise, we would never sign a diploma that we felt was worthless or not earned. Yet it might be one variable that prevented a student from being successful. Here's an example. An English language learner who moves to our high school as an overaged, undercredited student, for example. So 17, they have until 21, and they lack the credits. They still have to pass their Regents exams. We can translate them. We have bilingual sections, math, 2 social studies, 1 science, pass. The English language arts Regents. You can't translate that one. However, it's not an English test. It's an writing and reading test, and not even a writing and reading test in English. It's how you can write and construct writing and how you can read for understanding. Yet the institution doesn't allow us to translate that. We've had several students, the clock ran out on them. So is the Regents exam the only way we can prove mastery? Or if you're an ENL and classified student who gets extended time and you have 2 Regents on the same day, you're testing for 12 hours. And as you move from one room to the other, we're pushing pizza in your mouth so that you can just keep going. It seems to me there's probably—
It's not child-centered. Yeah, that's not human-centered. It's, yeah, interesting. Those are 2 profound examples about why the system needs to change. And I'm so glad that you're working on that. I'd like to ask you a question I ask every guest who comes on the podcast. How does the term an imperfect leader resonate with you?
I love the term. When I teach, I teach aspiring superintendents and aspiring administrators. And I tell them at the beginning of the course, nothing that we are about to do is life and death. It is urgently important. It is, in my opinion, the cornerstone of our democracy, the biggest lever for social justice. But we are not an air traffic controller, and we do not have our hands in someone's brain on an operating table, right? We will make mistakes. We will hopefully fall forward. We will hopefully have a network of people that will help, and we will hopefully have built trust in our institution and organization, where when you make a mistake, it's a small withdrawal from that social capital account and not a bankruptcy. And when you're imperfect, I think in order to be a successful imperfect leader, you have to be a successfully transparent imperfect leader. We saw a lot of that in one of the questions you had asked me to consider was, where was I an imperfect leader? And I joked with one of my colleagues, when wasn't I an imperfect leader?
Yes, and in segment 2, we're going to get to that. I can't wait.
And just transparently communicating to people, I'm going to do my best, and that may fall short, but we'll get to it. We're not landing planes. We're going to communicate. We're going to we're going to have the generosity of spirit. We're going to give the benefit of the doubt, because we have a shared vision and mission for what we're trying to accomplish here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zach Taylor. I'm the Executive Director at the Center for Transforming Education.
And I'm Peter Stiepelman, a former superintendent from the Midwest and the host of An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership podcast. And listen, we call it an imperfect leader because one of the things that we do know in leadership is that we get into these positions and then there's sort of this expectation that we're going to be perfect. And that's just not the case. And what we're seeking all the time is an opportunity to come together with others who are doing very similar work and learn from each other, share our stories, share our successes, and also try to figure out how to solve some of our problems. And so Zach and I have created Talk Soup, is what we're affectionately calling it, SUPT, right? In terms of superintendents coming together, learning together, and also having fun together. Zach, what else would you add?
I just say that in my work with school leaders that I've seen almost, a kind of loneliness at the top of the system. And the fact that oftentimes leaders feel lonely, it's a lonely place. And this is an opportunity to come, to even commiserate a little bit, but also to have a reflective practice, to find solutions and to come together with people who understand, maybe the only people that really understand what you're going to, and to find those solutions, to find ways to feel encouraged, to move forward day to day, month to month as we meet.
If you'd like to learn more, come over to our website, imperfectleader.com, and sign up. We'd love to spend time with you.
We look forward to seeing you.
We're back for segment 2 of An Imperfect Leader called Imperfect Leadership in After Action. And my guest today is Lars Clemensen, Superintendent of Hampton Bay's Union Free School District and the President of NYSCOSS. In this segment, we ask our guests to deconstruct a decision, and then we talk about it. So let's see what happened.
I think back to COVID, where March 13th was the last day we were in school. And in June, when we got back into the classrooms to clean them out, we still had St. Patrick's Day things on in the classrooms. Very eerie. So my Facebook memories keep popping up. And
sure. Oh my gosh. Yeah, of course, your phone's saying on this day, and you're going, this is the day I pulled together 150 people to say, all right, look, I think we're just going to be out for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So these are things we need to do. Who's been at Kinko's to make sure that every classroom has everything they need. Parents can come pick them up, or hopefully we'll be back.
So I think about in Hampton Bays, we're a school of 2,000 kids, 1,700 families. It's a densely populated area. It's about 14 square miles, bordered by the bay on one side and the ocean on the other side. And we don't have a town hall. We belong to a bigger town of Southampton, and that's in Southampton Village. So the school really becomes the cornerstone of commonality for so many people. You either raised your kids in the school, you went to school, you're paying taxes to the school, you vote here, you've seen a play, a football game, etc. So the school really, I think, is a defining characteristic of our community. And I found that we were in that role during COVID. People looked to the school for information, for security, and there were plenty of decisions that we stumbled on, maybe because we were in the fog of war and didn't know. But I would say the reopening valve we were very careful with. And where I stumbled was taking the breath and the beat to whenever a decision was being made, to quickly sketch out the communication plan. What is the order of communication? And I go back to, I said that in the previous segment, the importance of communicating with all of your stakeholders. That's not a cliche term that we train and think about, because if one group hears it first, are they valued more? Has the other group been devalued? And I found myself as a leader being on the balls of my feet, needing to answer questions or feeling obligated to answer questions because people were wanting information so quickly and they needed some information quickly. And I think there was an inability or not as strong a muscle to take a pause and say, I'm going to communicate at this time. And then I take the quiet minute to sketch out, all right, what is the key message? What is the key order of who needs to know what, when? We were reopening classrooms. If the teachers heard about it first, the administrators said, wait, what? You're reopening some of my classrooms? Here's some concerns I have. If the administrators heard it before the teachers, they'd say, this decision was made. When are you going to tell us? We haven't made it yet. We're just talking. And that is like this juggernaut of...
Oh my gosh. You're talking, I mean, you're using COVID as the vehicle, and then you could add anything into that for any decision, right? Because particularly then you sprinkle in social media on there. And so then even the message gets distorted, or I heard, or I thought, and yeah, wow. Okay. So if I understand correctly, we're in the pandemic. And throughout the entire pandemic, there are decisions being made, and then there is an opportunity and expectation to communicate that with your public, and inside the system and outside the system. And as you indicated, you have to talk with externally with outside your system, because you need their trust in you to be able to continue to do great things for kids. And so then I'm thinking to myself, okay, so it sounds like what got overlooked in terms of communication, particularly at this time in your leadership, was that impulse we have to avoid the impulse to make quick decisions. And so we were making decisions, and then in terms of communication and communicating with one group before the others. And you wish you had taken that sort of step back and really mapped out anytime you're making a decision, how you were doing it. Maybe so I'm kind of curious, am I sort of circling around what I understood the issue to be?
Yeah, that's a bullseye. And it reminds me of the need for leaders to prioritize their wellness. We were tired during that time, and there was conflicting information. And before people even got opinionated in either direction about COVID, there was just the fear, which is exhausting. Is my family safe? Am I safe? And now the responsibility of your community. I think of school as a community leader. We serve as Red Cross shelters during hurricanes and things like that. Do I have a role to be there? Not technically, but do I feel a commitment to be there for periods of time? Yeah.
People notice when you're there, and they notice when you're not there.
Yeah. Yeah. And communicating is that discipline and self-regulation to control the clock is compromised when you're tired and you're exhausted, and there's just one decision after the other to make, and you're just making, because working with your stakeholders can be time consuming also, because they're seeing things that are in your blind spot that you can't see, but you need to make this decision and the community is waiting. So that pressure to go as opposed to pause is really something that's important.
What did you learn about relationships?
How critical they are to both giving and receiving, supporting somebody who doesn't even know they need support because you're just in the weeds. And that with strong relationships, there's trust and grace. So when you're imperfect, and you're transparent and you're explaining, there have been times where I've walked away with black eyes, but there also have been times where I've been given the benefit of the doubt. And I like to think that's because I had a good relationship with that group. Oh, it's Lars, right? I joke that sometimes I'll hear community members or elsewhere say, I talked to Mr. Jones and Mr. Smith and Dr. Andrews and Lars. I'm fine with that. But
yeah, I was going to say, I mean, that really speaks to the roots that you've put down, that you already had established, that when you return, that you strengthen, that you do get grace. People know your heart. And so sometimes when you make a decision that may not be understood, and so instead of spinning a narrative of that you didn't care, is let me find out how he arrived there. You get that benefit of the doubt. I think about all of the superintendents right now, because you are an outlier in terms of the national average of superintendents. They're typically in their positions now 3 years. And if you're a leader of color, it's 2 years, or a woman, it's also about 2 years. And this is Rachel White's work at the University of Texas, Austin, who's really just documenting this in the superintendent's lab. And those who took over right as COVID was starting really were at such a distinct disadvantage because their communities didn't know them. And so they really struggled. So every one of us, I was similar to you in that I had been in the district for a while. So people knew me, even though it was incredibly difficult and still required at one point for a police car to be parked outside my house because of the kind of threats that we were getting. But wow. It was a very divided community. And so it was kind of like a snow day on steroids. It was a lose proposition, whatever decision we made. And so really curious about your topic today, because that communication piece and what you learn from it is paramount. I mean, taking that step back, and I'm going to do my own sort of self-reflection on where could I have done a better job of really being clear on this is how we're going to communicate. So when teachers do hear, they know it's because it was all articulated and communicated. We're going to start with principals because they have to get the buildings ready. Then we're going to go to teachers because they have to be thinking about their classrooms. Then we're going to food service and custodial. And in fact, we may even been talking to facilities before principals, because the principals aren't the ones opening the doors and making sure the air quality is ready and that, that HVAC units are working and all those kinds of things. So I probably could have really benefited from this conversation like 3 years ago. Not that I ever want to relive it. I'm so happy to have this conversation now.
Me too.
In the end, what was something that was good that came out of this situation? How has this experience for you sort of helped you as you then began to make subsequent decisions in your leadership? It's been a few years now.
I was extremely proud of our community. So we saw a police car outside of your home indicates a divided community at best. Many of our colleagues were in similar situations. Communities divided, Board of Education meetings, hot, superintendent burnout. Those who entered the profession said, is it always like this? And those who...
Dumpster fire going down a river. Dumpster fire going down.
It's right. Do that image. I can attribute our leadership team's communication and transparency, being live on social media, live streaming. Those are now the most basic communication tools. Built trust in our community, even not related to school. So our gymnasiums were closed. And with our local hospital, when in early 2021, actually it was over the Christmas break in 2020, 2021, when a vaccine had been announced, but the supply chain wasn't ready yet. I called our hospital, I called our county executive, and I said, sign Hampton Bays up to be the first school-based vaccination site. And my messaging, as these social media memories pop up about our vaccination sites, the hospital did it, but we hosted more than 4,000 doses of vaccine. And in our communication, we always said, taking the vaccine is a personal decision between you and your healthcare provider. We are simply providing home court advantage because this is a scary time. And the Hampton Bays Middle School Gymnasium is a happy, familiar place. And we didn't have, and the vaccination question, the testing question, the mask question, wildly divided in the country. We didn't experience that anger here because I think we respected the stakeholders and where they were.
What advice would you give to an aspiring leader?
Support, I would say it's the best. It's second to the teacher in the classroom. It's the number one indicator of student achievement. I think it's the biggest lever for social justice change to be a leader, and it is the biggest lever to do good in a community. My advice is to not go it alone. So it is hard to get to SA in New Orleans and to the council's Winter Institute in Albany, which was the 3 days preceding ASA. But you can find yourself chained to your desk doing the things. But the network of colleagues in a professional learning network is so critical to a positive affirmation, a learning experience, people who get it and understand, and fuel in the tank for you to keep working on the shared mission of making sure every single kid gets the opportunity they deserve.
Our guest today was Lars Clemensen, Superintendent of Hampton Bays Union Free School District and the President of NYSCOSS. And typically I write little notes as I'm having conversations with leaders. And the one I just kept writing down for me was just how student-centered, how child-centered. And let me take away the word student, because I really think that student is sort of a label back to 100 years ago in terms of the sort of factory conveyor belt model. Right. They're not widgets. They're children with hopes and dreams. And every bit of our conversation conveyed that. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you so much for being a part of this program today.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for keeping a national network to do this very hard work together.
And we're back.
Yes, we are.
Peter.
Yes.
Can I start with how he got this job? How he got that, at least how he got hired
although
in
it does give me
Hampton
sort
Bay.
of hives thinking about why my kids will always say, like, why can't we go to the public pool? I'm like, we'll go to this one public pool where I know nobody else goes, but otherwise, no.
That part made perfect sense to me. If I'm you, I understand the idea of trying to suddenly hold an impromptu PTA meeting and or board meeting while in my trunks.
A sense he doesn't. I get a sense he's all right talking.
He's all in. Yeah, it's possible. Yeah,
well,
it's possible.
In his community, it's I'll talk to Mayor Johnson. I'm going to talk to the fire chief. I'm going to talk to Mr. Smith and Lars.
And so he'll be there. Yeah, exactly.
So I imagine it's just something he's used to.
He said this phrase that I thought was really interesting. He said, I'm breaking down all of the barriers. And I'm like, this doesn't feel like there's very many barriers for you. You got a job while hanging out at the beach.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I thought for a moment that you'd find that funny, and then thinking about your work and around dismantling systems of oppression, and that you would say, wait a second, it's curious to me that this is how it worked. And I would say this is how the world works, unfortunately. And this is why we're so, at least from my perspective, I'm grateful that his district has someone like Lars who is mindful of the systems and then is trying to be, I think in his own words, like, we're in the future business. So how can I imagine a better future for the kids in my school district and give them opportunities so that so that everybody has the kind of opportunity that is not dependent on just the relationship that one has. I mean, relationships matter, though. They do. They just matter.
He said something that really made me wonder about you and it connecting or resonating with you. He said a common core value of superintendents is to find opportunities. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Does Peter think that's a common core value of superintendents as a former superintendent?
I would say, yeah. I mean, last week you asked me about my own moral focus and sort of this I believe. And I said, yeah, it's about opportunities, right? It's about the opportunity gap. And so when there are people like Lars out there who are building opportunities for kids so that they're in the position to leverage those relationships. So I think what I'm saying is that what he wants to do is to make sure that those relationships aren't exclusive to one location, but rather are stitched together. So there are many opportunities for kids to be able to then build their careers and their lives. And yeah, I do think that's one of our roles is to build opportunities for kids.
That I felt like he was trying to do. The concept of the future, being in the future business, was what he is creating. And I love that about it. I really enjoyed that section as he talked about the ways in which he thinks about schooling and that he thinks about it as an investment in the future, not an expense.
Yes, that was such wisdom, right? I mean, and it is. And then it becomes the conversation of the community. You know, he's in the Hamptons area. So you've got two communities within his community. You've got obviously the seasonal residents who don't attend his schools. And then you've got the actual year-round residents that do. And so he's got this sort of negotiating to do. And the fact that he is so intentional about building that community within his community. For example, I was envious. I was inspired by his decision to offer the vaccine and the way that he talked about it. Yeah. This is a decision for you and your doctor, and we want to create an opportunity or offer the space for you to get your vaccine if that's what you choose to do. We're going to make sure that we've got it. And I was one of the first out of the gate to say, we want to be able to provide it here. And I thought to myself, that was super smart, because if people trust the school as a center of community, and now he's offering the vaccine to be administered there if someone so chooses to get it, awesome. It just, to me, he's just very thoughtful.
Yeah. I mean, that's his connection to your point about the after action review, that his understanding of community and creating community it stood out. It stood out. But I will say that to me, his after action review feels like every superintendent that we interview is after action review. And that is generally COVID was hard. And I'm like, yeah, it was. Yeah. Really hard.
It really was. It really was. Can I go back to the conversation, or at least your reflection on communication? Because I thought what he brought up was super interesting, particularly because depending on when people hear information, they draw conclusions and write narratives about where they see how they perceive their importance in the organization. Like if I heard third, then I must be third most important. And so you just sort of almost, I don't know, like embed in yourself, like this sort of, this is where I stand. And it wasn't until I think my second year, I met a guy named Mark Hansen. He's a superintendent just outside of Milwaukee, who really helped me think through how to make decisions so that you don't fall victim to the impulse to make a quick decision. Because I think often I don't know, how do you feel about this? We sometimes think that we're taking the time to make a rational decision, but in fact, we're actually rushing. Does that resonate for you?
Oh, yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. 100%.
Is that what you notice with leaders that you work with?
Not only, I mean, I think that's leaders in general, right? Regardless even of role, in that what you think is slow and you taking a beat is probably not. And
taking a beat. That's exactly what he says, right? He says, you got to take a beat.
Take a beat. And the question, as musicians, you and I know that take a beat depending on the time of the measure is completely different.
Sure.
And your beat is not my beat. And so that's the issue. And learning that requires that you slow down enough to realize that once you do take the beat and you implement your decision, that you're probably going to fail. There's going to be a failure somewhere in it. It could be a wild success, but something is going to be needing reflection, learning, and change. And you'll be better as a result of it. Hopefully it's mostly a success, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes
no, yeah. When you're impulsive, then you're constantly engaging in those mid-course corrections because you didn't take the time. And this is not to suggest that you should engage in paralysis where you never make a decision.
No,
and so Mark Hansen, he taught me and some others who are in my network this idea of look, listen, learn, lead. It's 4 L's. And look is just where the leader says, look to their team. Look, I'm trying to solve this problem. I'm trying to figure out the best way to move forward on this issue. Now, listen, I'm going to tell you everything that I've been dealing with and the decisions that have been made up to this point and the next steps I'm thinking about doing. And then learn is where everybody now starts to ask the leader lots of questions. What does this look like 3 months from now, 6 months from now? Who have you talked to? Are we considering the people most impacted by this decision? What have your past experiences told you? What assumptions are you making about this decision and the people impacted? All those kinds of things that a leader needs to hear before they make a decision.
Yeah.
And then they move to that 4th step of lead, which is if you're ready to now let's go, then who's going to announce the decision? To whom are they going to announce? How are they going to do it? All the kinds of things that Lars was talking about.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're not ready to lead because the questions that you were asked really require further conversation with people who are not in the room. And so you go back to that learn and you continue to harvest the wisdom of others before you move to lead. And I loved that. It really slowed me down because as you can hear me talking, I'm a quick talker, quick thinker, and sometimes fell victim to that impulse to make a quick decision.
Yes. Resonated with that 4-part frame. I'd say that my experience is that as a leader and with working with other leaders, getting stuck on lead or getting to lead quickly is usually the issue without realizing that step back is so important.
That's interesting. 4 L's got there and we're at lead. We're ready to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lead is the thing. And I understand that. There also is the point that goes with lead, and that is to your point of paralysis. Lead requires that you take the first step.
It does.
You're going to have to do that and you'll make a mistake. You'll make a mistake. And that's the job, right? The job is show others that you are thoughtful enough to try and do it right. And when you fail, say, yep, mess that up and going to try again.
That makes sense. You know, having known you now for a year, because by the way, this episode is our 1-year anniversary. So
what? Is it really?
Happy anniversary. Tomorrow is our anniversary.
That's
Why shouldn't we celebrate it today? Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary to you.
Thank you.
So wonderful. Makes me so happy.
Yeah, me too. And so having known you for this past year, as I described the 4 L's, I want to be intentional by saying this is about making a decision.
Yeah.
And because I could understand where you would say,
as a coach,
you might ask, then what about how will you know that you're being successful? And when will you know that you need to make a mid-course correction? And all those kinds of things that come with a cycle of inquiry. I would say the 4 L's complement the cycle of inquiry. They don't replace it. Okay, coach, happy anniversary. Thank you for that gift that you have given me. Be mindful of the context of making a decision and where it falls into this sort of cycle of inquiry.
Can we end on this I want to end on one more reflection with him in this being in the future business and the effort that he has put into place in his district to monitor what students like. He said, find out what students like and build program around them. So they start monitoring in 6th grade and they're checking in with students every year, all the way up. And it made me, I think that's amazing. My experience is in the schools that I've been in, that there are things that they do, but they're as robust as you described when you described from your district in Missouri, that it's, we talk to them. It sounds like they might like this or that, maybe community college, maybe 4-year, we'll see. But this is a different level of intentionality that he's putting into this, to the point where the senior that he interviews, the young woman that a couple of years ago, who's in tears, who gets it spit out in her assessment that she is, this is the best, that her skills are kindness, empathy, human connection, communication, and then the assessment spits out funeral director. Like what assessment are you using
I know.
where it gets that specific, where the job is, oh, yeah, you should be helping people with their dead?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like,
So
that's
empathetic.
hilarious.
Like, I love working with this guy. He's kind of the silent type, you know.
I thought when she said I wanted to be a teacher, I just thought of that's the same job. It's just on the earlier end of the whole spectrum. I loved the intentionality with thinking about the students and what they want for themselves over time.
Yes.
I just was so impressed by it. So
Yes.
impressed.
I totally agree. I mean, first of all, I was now thinking of this teacher. Like, why does Mrs. Baker drive a funeral hearse to school? Okay, but it's yellow. It's kind of painted yellow, like it's I don't know, school bus. I don't know. Okay,
big.
but
Carries a lot.
Carries a lot. Right. She's willing to carpool. No one wants to ride this. It's like anyone want to sit in the back.
You have to buckle in by laying down.
Wow. I agree. It is really impressive the way that his district has been so intentional. And it actually reminds me of a conversation I had with my father just the other day, where he asked me whether or not schools have been thoughtful of the fact that not everybody needs to go to college, that everybody needs to have a plan, but they don't need to necessarily go to college if what they want to pursue does not require a college degree. And I was like, Dad, of course. I mean, school districts all across the nation are investing. I'll use that word because they really are investing in career and technical education, where kids can go to career centers within their schools or associated with their schools, or they can go half the day to their high school, half the day to a CTE center and get their industry recognized credentials and be able to go right into the workforce right after they graduate. Or, and he was like, you need to bring in guests who talk about that more, because I think we're not hearing that enough. And it's true. We talk about it a lot. We need to continue to, if we're going to be successful in reclaiming the narrative about public schools and how innovative they are and how responsive they are to community needs, because I think one of the things that Lars talked about, and you and I talked about it offline, is that decisions are local, like local decisions. And so how do we, as school districts and school leaders, make local decisions that will benefit that local, regional, and state community and provide kids with the very best opportunities? And I think Lars is right on that. And I'm so glad that he's leading in the state of New York, the Superintendent Association, to really make sure that we're all talking about that at a state level. And then certainly, as New York goes, so many districts go, so many states really pay attention.
I think that, yes, it's 100%. He said, I definitely believe that our decision-making is local, and every place ends up being colored by the locality of that particular place, school calendars, et cetera. I do wonder, I want to know, are the counselors that interview these seniors as they help a senior think about that path, whatever path that is, do they encourage them to consider that path doesn't have to remain their path, and that who they are at 18 won't necessarily be who they are at 25, and won't be who they are at 45. And that understanding that is really hard to understand at 18. I remember myself at 18. I wasn't thinking about that at all. But now at 55, I realize I know what I want to be when I grow up. And I want to be a carpenter. That's what I want to be. And I'm...
All right, wait, hold on a second. Let me just say this to our listeners. Jamie has just gone through a major home renovation where he's been out of his house for, 8-9 months. And so the fact that you want to be a carpenter, it doesn't surprise me based on just every week talking to you, how's it going now? A nightmare.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
It's a nightmare. It is a nightmare.
Yeah. So let's check in with you 6 months from now. But what I do want to say is, as we conclude here, I want to know, what did your career assessment spit out for you, listener? And I'm kind of curious.
Yes.
So put that in the comments section if you don't mind, and give us 5 stars if you don't mind. And Jamie, this is
did you even get a career assessment?
Yeah,
I'm interested too.
Yeah.
This is why Lars is so amazing. Yeah. But so anybody's experience with that, please share that. I'd love to read those.
You've been listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. I'm Peter Stiebelman.
And I'm Jamie Clemenson.
And we will see you next week.
Thank you, Peter.